Hello, Sarah. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good morning to you too.
Thank you very much for your time and taking part on Wicked 15. 15 minutes of five captivating questions. Is that okay? And you ready for it?
No pressure then.
No, thank you for your time. I do appreciate it. The first question, really, I think is it's either fairly easy or complex. Is how do you see the world today through yourselves?
I think the world is in a state of flux, and I think that I think we've lived in a world where we've talked about change being the only constant, and I think we're all now living in a world where we're experiencing that change is the only constant. I think that offers us huge amounts of challenges and a huge amount of opportunities, actually. Um, but it's fascinating times. I think we're watching a new world emerge slowly but surely. Well, maybe not so slowly anymore now.
And has that change recently only happened over the last few months, or has it been sort of a building beast as such, really?
I think it's been a building beast, and I think that many of us have known, all of us have known, it's been building towards it. I think that we've done what we do best as humans is we've chose to delete the stuff that was going on in the background, and now we can't delete it anymore. I think it's truly in front of us, and I think that with that, as I say, comes great opportunity, but opportunity requires different mindset. And I guess I hope that actually what comes out of all of everything that's happened this year and all the previous years that have gone on. I mean, for me, the big things around climate change have been bubbling around in the background, and yet now that's definitely going to be coming into the forefront. But the whole sort of the whole thing around freedom, the whole thing around um, your choices in life, the whole thing around what's really important, all the things that we've talked about, but people then have continued to live a life that doesn't necessarily, is true to that. We've now got a chance to do that.
Yeah, and you mentioned two quotes. You meant the delete and then the choices. Is the delete almost the accept the past but move to the future, and then the choices is about actually the future is potentially endless for me.
I think the delete for me is that we have known many of these things are happening, but we haven't had to face them. They haven't become a burning platform. I think now they're a burning platform. And I think the opportunities comes in us being able to be brave and courageous as human beings and say, okay, now this is right in front of us. Let's get hold of it and let's do something that's very positive for our future, but more importantly for the future generations that are coming
Yeah.
beyond us. And I think those voices of young people that are sort of looking at a world that they're going to bring families into at some point, they need to be louder than ever now.
Yeah, yeah, and I like the burning platform because that drives change. And if you haven't got a burning platform, then you kind of people haven't got the motivation or inclination
Absolutely.
or drive to actually make a difference, have they?
Yeah, I mean, you only have to think about the really recent events with COVID and all those people that I've spoken to that have said, I've been working myself so hard for so many years. I've barely seen my family. I have, been doing all of these things to try and create a future for the family that I don't ever spend time with. I've now suddenly sat down and had dinner with my children 5 nights a week, 6, 7 nights a week for the last 3 months. And wow, my God, what an amazing bunch of people. But I've lived with them for the last 15 years. I've just forgotten what that was like. So I think it's things like as simple as that at a really local level that, you know, as organizations come out of this and as we emerge out of this, we need to pay attention to what really makes us human. And that's the stuff that makes us human. And, those so many people have been able to give infinitely more to their careers in the last 6 months than they probably have done, even though they've thought they have done for the last 6 years. And that's just because actually, their balance is there. They are connected. They are much more resourceful. They're much more able to really draw out the best of themselves and give it to them, just simply because they're connected. They're connected to people that matter most in their world.
Yeah, and when you talk about, so when we move on to challenges, do you see the virtual setting that you've described here today? Do you see that as a challenge or an opportunity or both?
This way of interacting, you mean, in terms of
Yeah, through virtual. 'Cause it's interesting that you say you learn your family connections are stronger. You're now interacting almost virtually by Zoom or by Teams or by Google rather than face to face. Do you think is that positive, or is that an opportunity, or a challenge from your
I think it's a
perspective?
massive opportunity. I think it's a massive opportunity. I think that, you know what, there's ups and there's downs with everything. You know, it can't always be all the good stuff without some of the difficult stuff. And I suppose it's just how you take a view on life, and it's the lens you look through. So for me, my experience has been, you know, we've as a business, we've worked between virtual and face to face for a long time, but much less in terms of the virtual space, just because businesses weren't ready to accept that that might work. You know, now I'm able to have conversations with people for 2 hours across the world, which actually previously before would have taken one or either or both of us to have traveled for a day either side to have a 2 hour conversation, just because we thought that would give us a better result. It doesn't necessarily happen. No, that, don't get me wrong, there are times, and I think there will be times in the future where organizations have to have people together because people are human. You know, we're social beings.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't have to solely rely on that as our only method. And I think what this has done in the last 6, 9 months is broken through some perceptive and some barriers about I can't connect with you at all this way.
The technology barriers as such.
Absolutely. You know, do you know, I worked with an organisation at the beginning of lockdown who we had talked to just before lockdown, and we worked together to deliver a massive organisational change. And I worked with the exec team, and I'd never met them face to face. We had an amazing result. It didn't affect the result of what happened, and it was a big learning for me too, actually, doing that.
It's interesting because, you know, I often reflect on this, and you build connections, you build relationships. And I was reflecting on this a couple of weeks ago where I call somebody a great friend of mine, and I've never met this person because all our interactions have been virtual for 2 years. Is that quite a strange concept to do?
No, I think you can do that, because I think at the end of the day, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, you know, no longer should we ever be in the same room as anybody again. I think there's huge value in that, but I also don't think that we need to devalue the ability to build relationship by this method. I think the biggest thing is that you can see somebody.
Yeah, the face to
You
face.
have to be able to see somebody.
Yeah. What other
And
challenges do you see then over or what have you seen? Where the challenges? How have you had to adapt to sort of counter the environment that you're currently facing or seeing?
I think we the challenges have been about letting go of what we believed was the status quo,
Mm.
and I think that there are huge challenges that come with complacency, and I think the recent situation has shaken a lot of people out of complacency,
Yeah.
um, and that, you know, what comes with that means that people have to change, and changes, it can be hard, can be
Yeah.
really hard. um, I think from our perspective as a business, we're small and we're agile. That's one of our fundamental things. And we also take each moment as it comes, which sounds a bit strange, but we have a real belief that things are created in that moment. So take the moment, create the best of that moment, and then there's another moment to come along.
That's
So
just emergent
actually,
change, though, isn't it?
pardon?
That's just emergent change, though, isn't it? That you're
Yeah,
describing.
and that's my point, right back to where I started from, which was that, you know, the only thing we know is constant is change. Well, actually now, you know, it kind of suits the way that we work. But I also know there's lots of our clients that have found it incredibly hard.
Yeah.
You know, their infrastructure is much bigger, much more complex, you know, huge challenges around actually how do I keep an engaged workforce that used to be the container of that engagement was bricks and mortar. Now the container of that engagement has just disappeared, and it's everybody's kitchen tables and, you
Yeah.
know, where they can find a space. So it becomes much more about the psychological commitment and the psychological connection, not the physical connection. That's a big challenge. for lots of businesses.
With somebody yourself who's really inspiring, really personable, how do you have you had to adapt the way that you engage with people, whether that's your clients, whether that's your team, the people around you, your family, your friends? Have you had to change who you are to some degree or reinvent yourself?
You know what? I would say no. I'm just really challenging myself. I'm answering that question. Um, no, no, simply because I think, especially if I separate them out slightly, but from a work point of view, the way that I've always worked is based around relationship. So I that's really important for me, both within our business, so the people that work with us, the team, trust, relationship, respect, openness, honesty,
Yeah.
are the absolute foundations and core of the way that we work. We are the same with our clients. So, so we have very long standing relationships with our clients and we really get to know them. So actually, it hasn't changed. I guess the biggest test, and we've had 2 or 3 new clients come on board actually through this time, which has been amazing. But the biggest test is, how do you continue, I guess, to really foster those relationships and have that sort of real closeness as this situation continues? Because I think it will continue. I don't think this is short term. I think this is.
Any of your clients struggled with the new ways of
Yeah,
engagement that we're seeing?
yeah, massively,
So
massively.
it's been easier for you and harder for them.
Yeah, I think so, because I think, our clients are not necessarily in the business of people. We're in the business of people. Um, our clients are often in the business of the business they're in.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they're having to really, I guess, use all of those sort of skills that they have around people and connection and relationship much more than they probably ever had to before. There was lots of other things that helped them to have that when they were working in their old sort of scenario. This scenario, I think, has blown apart. It's really interesting, actually, because for me, I think from a leadership point of view, what I've seen is I've seen some leaders that I would have assumed would do amazingly well in terms of retaining that sense of connection and charisma and ability to really drive the performance of others fall away.
Yeah.
Massively. And I've seen others who probably have been in the shadows a little bit.
Yeah.
Really come to the fore. So I guess it's starting to redefine what leadership is all about for many. Not for me, because for me, leadership has always been about the ability to lead people.
Yeah, and there's a sort of a mindset that they think great leaders are also innately disruptive. Do you think we're in this very disruptive time through the various Black Swan events that we're seeing? Do you think these events will naturally create or foster a new style, new types of leaders?
I think they're opening doors for people, for leaders who have got that skill set to be able to step into it. Because I think there's a lot of, if you talk to a lot of very senior leaders in big organizations, they'd like to believe that they were disruptive before this.
Yeah.
But they're probably not.
Yeah.
And that might be that the culture doesn't allow them to be. That might be that actually, they don't have that skill set. I think what this situation is doing is where those cracks are forming, the light's shining through, and the light are going to be those leaders of the future. Equally, I think that going back to what I was saying about, this sort of flux and change in the wider issues across the world, I think this situation could afford a lot of opportunity for the younger leaders that are coming through.
Yeah.
Who have a very different view of the world and want to create a very different world. So I think there's a massive opportunity there as well.
Well, that's really inspiring. Thank you for that. That's brilliant. But I suppose the last question, which would be an interesting one, if you talk about the young leaders, young people coming through, what advice would you give somebody that's coming through at early start of their career? And the second part of the question is that if you could give yourself advice 2 years, 3 years ago prior, what would that be?
I think the first bit of advice, and it goes for my previous self and for those coming through, is never stop learning.
Yeah.
I think the second thing is don't let your ego get in the way.
Yeah.
So, if you find yourself in a position where you feel like you are defending yourself just because you feel that you need to defend yourself, or defend being right, then stop for a moment, because the moment you do that, you stop hearing what's around you, and then you stop learning. And then I think the third thing probably is, be kind to yourself. That I think there are a lot of people out there that are hugely talented and who constantly beat themselves up. And I think that actually, don't waste your energy on telling yourself that you're not quite good enough. Put your energy into what you're brilliant at, and then surround yourself with the people that are even more brilliant than you, and you'll carry on learning.
Yeah. So learning's the key to it, really, as is the advice and that. And I like the idea that you be kind to yourself. I think is really powerful, because we are, our worst critics, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. And I if I could look back, and I think if you ask me that question in another 3 years and I look back to now, I can't say that I definitely keep learning. I definitely tick, I'm fine on that one. I'm not so good on the be kind to yourself. I'm pretty tough on myself all the time.
So what advice would you have given yourself then?
I think if I knew where I would be now 3 years ago, I would have said just chill out and relax a little bit. Enjoy the ride a little bit, maybe.
And more with onesies on.
Yeah, well, but then I suppose I ask myself that question, if, I think I'd be telling myself that, I'll tell myself that forever. I think being driven is really great, but don't overdo it.
Yeah. Well, now that's been absolutely fantastic. Hopefully it's has been not too painful for yourself, but it's been totally inspiring. And I think there's a lot of people, Sarah, that can learn a lot from the wisdom, some of the ideas, your viewpoints and perceptions about what's happened in the past, and what opportunities can be afforded for the future. So, thank you very much for your time. It's been super cool speaking to you again. And for me, you've been a great inspiration. So thank you for that. And your others will learn and be inspired from some of the words that you speak about. So thank you, Sarah.
No worries. Thanks very much.